Thank you all for joining us this evening for your swearing in ceremony. Let me start by thanking everybody for attending. I think the Deputy VP is supposed to start this off, but if she's not ready, then I will. So let me just start by thanking the staff here at my office for all their work on community boards, my chief of staff and senior advisor, my deputy chief of staff, the general counsel's office, the communications team, and of course, the community boards and constituent services team. I also want to give a big shout out. This was a huge undertaking this year to digitize this process, and we had two phenomenal women at the front of this process and at the back of this process, making sure we could get through this. And I want to give them major kudos. I want to start by thanking Maricela Cano and both Kat Bresler for modernizing this process, really giving a holistic look at every community board and ensuring that this process really embraced some of the brightest folks around Queens. And as many of you know, this was not an easy process this year, because modernizing the process meant that we went from having close to just about 100, a little bit over 100 spots, but we got over 931 applications this year. So congratulations to each and every one of you who've been selected. I truly hope that you take this seriously, because as we saw this year, at the height of this pandemic, there was a lot of interest in people serving on their community boards. I also want to move forward by thanking now all of our community board chairs, district managers, the membership and staff of the boards as well. I'd like to congratulate each and every one of you. I know that this was also an adjustment for all of the board chairs as well. I want to also thank all of our colleagues in the city council. We don't make these decisions alone. And I want to thank them for not only being a part of this process, but really, as we talked about, making diversity central this year for our boards and improving the areas where we knew there were weaknesses. I want to thank our colleagues in the city council, all 14 of them, who really came in with open minds through this process, but also were firm partners in this process. I'm truly grateful to all of you once again for taking the call of community service. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you on behalf of all of the families in Queens County. As I've been saying throughout this process, democracy is at its strongest when the voices of all the people it serves are elevated, a principle we are proud to strive toward with all of you, this new class of appointees. With this year's community board operations, the Queens Borough President's Office entered the 21st century, and I talked about how we modernized this process. From digitizing the application process to increasing transparency. These reforms in this year's community board class is a great starting point, and we certainly have a whole lot more work to be done as we move through this. So we are grateful for each and every one of you who are part of this process and all of the work you'll do. Now, being community board members may require some long hours and lots of energy, so I want you all to stretch. Especially if this is the first time you are being appointed, because this is going to be something like you've never experienced, especially in light of all of the changes in Queens, but all of the things we need to do to make sure as we bounce back through this process, through this pandemic, that we are coming back stronger, but making sure, we hear a lot of talk about returning back to normalcy. And one of the things I want to stress is that, yes, we do want to get back to 100% capacity at our restaurants. We do want to get back to all of these things, but there are so many challenges across the borough, from healthcare to rent relief, right? I mean, all of these different things are going to be key things that you all will have a seat at the table on addressing as we move forward through our community boards throughout the years that you will certainly serve. So I want you to really embrace this moment. And I just want to touch on a few things, as you move through this, because I've certainly have not been the borough president my entire career in government. But one of the things I know is attending community boards that we have a lot of opinionated individuals, and it's okay to have an opinion. As my mama or papa used to allude to, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So the first thing I want to stress to everybody is to treat everybody with respect. Respect everybody's opinions. And obviously we've addressed that through the code of conduct. I'm sure the staff will go through this evening, but we want our boards to be a place where people feel safe. It should be a safe space for community members to have differences of opinions without making it personal. So we want everybody to treat each other with respect. I'm also going to stress the importance of showing up because we have gone through attendance records, and we've set a policy I'm sure the staff is going to go through. I alluded earlier to the fact that we had over 931 applications across the borough this year, 56% increase in interest in our community boards. So if you, for whatever reason, have unexcused absences and you just don't feel like showing up, or you don't want to serve on the board, I can assure you there's someone else out there who would want to fill your spot. And we saw that interest this year. So I want everybody to take these meetings seriously. You are appointed by the borough president's office, by council members in some cases as well. And we really need you to take this serious. Now is not the time for us to take this lightly. Once again, we are coming out of a pandemic, and it is more important that we are seriously serving our communities more than ever. I talked about respecting each other's space. Yes, you should speak out on issues, and everybody should be afforded those opportunities free of fear to be able to give their opinion. So once again, respecting each other's space. And also, one of the things I want to stress is hearing each other out. Sometimes we grow up in certain neighborhoods, or we may have a different socioeconomic status. We may all come from different backgrounds. So we may not all disagree on every facet of a plan that comes before a board. We may not be all on the same page, but we should at least be willing to hear each other out and then arrive at our own opinions as well. So with that being said, I just wanted to stress those things, that this was not in my notes, but this has been my experience in attending some community boards. And let me just end by saying that Queens is a very diverse place. I mean, listen, over 190 countries represented, over 350 languages spoken here in Queens County. People have their biases, and one of the ruled out is through training is to ensure that even if you have a bias, that you watch the way you say things. And I want to let everybody know on this line that I will have zero tolerance for any racism, for any threats. And I just want to make sure that I'm putting that out here very clear and concise for everybody to know that this office will have zero tolerance for these things. So once again, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. So be cognizant of the fact that there are 51 members on each board, and we should do our best, and try our best not to be offensive to people because they come from public housing or different areas as well. So I just wanted to put that out there because I know there will be a lot of debates as we move forward, but I just want folks to know that this office is taking this very serious. With public servants like you as partners, there's no shortage of what we can accomplish for the borough of Queens. So without further ado, it now is going to give me the great honor to turn this back over to, I believe, our deputy borough president. But I know that we also are going to have a flutist play a tune right now, and then I will come back to swear you in as we get through the program. But I just wanted to start the day, the evening this way to set the tone for each and every one of us. And once again, welcome each and every one of you. Congratulations on serving your communities. So I'm now going to turn it over. All righty, so I think our Deputy Borough President is up next. I know we're all getting muted.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Borough President. I'm Rhonda Binda, and I have the honor of serving as Queens Deputy Borough President. Please join me now in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's our pleasure tonight to swear in this term's Queens Community Board appointees. We're so proud that you, the 2021-2023 appointees, are the most diverse cohort of people representing Queens. Under Borough President Richard's leadership, we are on a mission to further diversify Borough Hall, and that extends to our community boards. We realize being a community board member isn't easy. It takes a lot of time, work, and effort, and while serving as volunteers. But your passion, dedication, and your knowledge of your neighborhoods is exactly what we need for Queens. Many congratulations to you all. Now I'm excited to turn it back to the man of the hour, our Queensborough President, the Honorable Donovan Richards Jr.
All righty. Thank you so much to our Deputy Borough President, who also played such a big role in ensuring we could get through this process and be here today. So I want to thank her for her words. And now it gives me great honor to now ask you all to raise your right hands. I can't see you all. Maybe let me change my view to gallery. Okay. All right. Oh, y'all look good. Y'all look like Queens in here. This is what Queens looks like. And all righty. Yeah, you all look great. All righty. So I'm going to ask you to repeat after me. I. State your name.
Edward Letow.
Brian. Lila Boyd.
Angie Bowley.
Repeat the name twice. All right. Now you repeat. Do solemnly affirm.
Do solemnly affirm.
To oppose Constitution.
United States.
United States Constitution.
United States of America.
Constitution of the State of New York.
Constitution of the State of New York.
Order of the City of New York.
Order of the City of New York.
Bylaws of the community.
Bylaws of the community board.
Affirm whatever you say.
Keep talking. Affirm whatever you say.
Constitution of the State of New York.
I affirm whatever you say.
Ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations to the class of 2021 and 2023 community board class. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask you all.
What?
Yes.
Next Monday at 6 p.m.
Shut off.
No, now you're muted, Mr.
We
Borough
knew
President.
this is gonna feel a lot different this year doing this virtually, and it was gonna sound a lot different doing this virtually. But I want to congratulate each and every one of you once again. This is what Queens looks like. Let's be a beacon of hope, a beacon of light. Let's be out there, get out there, and as we always say, Queens is the future. Let's be that shining example of where this city needs to go as we move into a post-pandemic world. So I will now turn this over back to the staff, but I want to congratulate each and every one of you. And now I guess you will start your formal process of trainings. Oh, I love that word, trainings. All righty, thank you all.
Thank you so much, BP. I'd like to ask that our General Counsel, Alan Swisher, step up to take the mic and introduce the Code of Conduct.
Good evening, everyone. Well, that was an interesting experiment, doing a virtual oath of office. But that's actually specifically what I wanted to talk about tonight, the duties and responsibilities that flow now that you are officially public servants of the City of New York and the Borough of Queens. So it's really an honor for me to speak here tonight and be one of the first to congratulate you on your appointment to your community board. My name is Alan Swisher, and I'm the General Counsel for the Office of the Queens Borough President. And I'm also joined by the Deputy General Counsel, the wonderful Tarika Morrison. And even though we're attorneys for the Borough President, our office, we also provide guidance to the boards on a number of issues, including adherence to the open meetings law and processing freedom of information law requests, and abiding by various local laws that might impact community board operations. Fortunately for all of you as individual community board members, these are technical issues. You're not going to have to deal with these on a day-to-day basis. Each board has a very capable and professional district manager who is a city employee who is responsible for handling and addressing these issues on a day-to-day basis. So if you have any questions or issues when it comes to board compliance, legal issues, things that affect board operations, those questions really should be referred to the district manager and your chair. And I know that Betty Bratton is going to be speaking later tonight about how boards operate on a day-to-day basis and some of those considerations. But as a community board member now, and now that you've all taken the oath, you are officially community board members. You are officially a public servant as defined by the New York City Charter. And with that role does come some legal responsibilities. Earlier this month, Borough President Richards issued a code of conduct for community board members that spells out these areas of responsibility. This document's already been distributed to all of you, so I just want to give a very quick summary. As a community board member, each of you is expected to maintain a positive attendance record with no more than 3 unexcused absences within a 6-month period. And as you recall, the Borough President mentioned this at the top, so this is something that we take very seriously. You need to refrain from threatening, intimidating, or harassing other members, community board employees, or members of the public. We'd ask that you inform our office of any changes to your eligibility for community board service, such as, for instance, moving out of your district or accepting employment with your local council member. You need to abide by our office's equal employment opportunity and sexual harassment prevention policies and the New York City human rights law, as well as the city's conflicts of interest law, which requires members to disclose conflicts and abstain from voting on matters affecting their private interests. And fortunately, for those particular laws, you are going to be receiving trainings. We're going to be discussing some of that tonight. And we're also going to be discussing some e-learning courses that you'll be expected to complete moving forward, also as a requirement of your appointment to serve on a community board. So the primary goal in presenting these expectations to all of you is really just to make the standard clear. We want to make sure that all community boards know exactly what's expected. And my goal as an attorney and an advisor to the boards is really to protect the integrity of the important work that all of you do. But what I can tell all of you is that you would not be here tonight and you would have not been appointed if we didn't have every faith that each of you are able to abide by these requirements and really be exemplar public servants for our borough. Unfortunately, tonight, we're not going to have a lot of time for Q&A, or any time actually, since it's such a packed schedule for Q&A. So I am going to ask if any of you have questions about the code of conduct to please refer that to my office by emailing legal@queensbp.org. And now I'm going to hand it over to the Deputy General Counsel, Tarika Morrison, who is going to discuss how our office will process complaints about potential violations of the Code of Conduct.
Good evening, everyone, and congratulations. This evening, I'll be discussing how our office handles complaints of misconduct from community board members and the public. The first is that we just wanted to formalize our process. A lot of people complain on Twitter and social media about things that happen in community board meetings. So this formal complaint process is something that we're implementing so that our office can investigate and understand what is going on in the community board meetings. So if you or a member of the public believes there have been a violation of the Code of Conduct, they may submit a formal complaint, and our office will conduct an investigation that articulates a violation. Anonymous complaints are not accepted, and the reason for this is that we will be conducting an investigation. We will not tell the other parties who the complainant is, but we need to know who you are so that we can speak to you about the allegation and get a sense of what happened. At the conclusion of an investigation, the borough president will be presented a report and a recommendation from the general counsel's office, but will make the final decision on what happens with the complaint. The goal here is really not to be punitive or police the community boards, but just formalize and have a standard procedure to deal with complaints so that issues can be resolved equitably. Whatever proposed resolution emerges will depend on the situation. And as the general counsel, Alan Swisher, has mentioned, you just send your complaint to legal@queensbp.org. And you can also send any questions on the Code of Conduct. I look forward to working with you all, and congratulations again.
Thank you both for that. I really appreciate it. The next part of our program will be for Latchman from DCAS to explain to us our next steps for e-learning, how to get our access codes for e-learning through DCAS, and then Lisa Atkins will go over our EEO policy that was emailed to you. Latchman. Thank you for unmuting. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Hello, good evening. My name is Latchman Hiralal. I work for DCAST in Learning and Development, and this evening, I'm going to share 3 mandated training that all city employees, including intern, consultant, volunteers, and board members are required to take. The first training is sexual harassment prevention. All employees are required to take this training on an annual basis. The current SHP cycle is from September 1, 2020 through August 31st, 2021. New hires should receive the training within 1 month of their hire date. The next training is on corruption prevention. All employees are required to take this training every 2 years. This depends on the last date an agency took the training, but we recommend all new employees, board members, and volunteers to take the training within 1 month of the hire date. So the last training is conflict of interest, COIB, that's the acronym. Same thing as the DOI training, all employees are required to take the training every 2 years, but we recommend the employee take the training within the first month of their hire date. So what to expect next? We will work with your agency to set up accounts in the learning system, and we will deploy the training to you. Your agency will, the agency will decide on the time frame that you have to take the training, and you know, those are the 3 mandated trainings you are required to take. I'm sure there are other trainings you will need to take. Yes, and that's all for me. I mean, thank you, and have a good night and stay safe.
Thank you. We will be emailing out that policy to our members and explaining how to log on and take those trainings virtually. Now I'd like to introduce Lisa Atkins from our office to explain what that EEO policy was that you got in your email last week.
Good evening. Good evening, and congratulations on your appointment or reappointment to Community Board Service. My name is Lisa Atkins. I am the co-EEO officer with my colleague Irving Poi, who you will hear from shortly within the program. As someone who works in New York City government, you have specific rights and responsibilities under the Queensborough President's Equal Employment Opportunity, or EEO, policy. The policy covers employees as well as job applicants and anyone else who works in city government capacity or workplace, such as community board members. The goals of this overview will be to familiarize you with this policy and enlighten you on the EEO rights, and to know the practices, and hopefully the goal is to encourage respect, courtesy, and professionalism on behalf of you with your colleagues. Because by knowing your EEO responsibilities, you will become familiar and you will treat others the way you would have yourself be treated within this workspace. If you are new to city government, you may be surprised to learn how broad the city's EEO protections are. If you have worked for a longer time, this is a great opportunity to sharpen your skills. Bear with me while I share the screen. And I'm not sure how to do this. Okay. So, among the things we will discuss briefly are the city's EEO policy and its protected classes, along with sexual harassment, reasonable accommodation, and how to file an EEO complaint, as well as harassment and retaliation. The Office of the Queensborough President of the City of New York is an equal opportunity employer and prohibits discriminatory employment actions against and treatment of city employees and applicants for employment based on actual or perceived protected classes under federal, state, and local human rights laws. As I said, is rather broad. The protected classes are age, alienage, citizenship status, arrest or conviction record, caregiving status, color, consumer credit history, disability, familial status, marital status, military status, national origin, partnership status, predisposing genetic characteristics, genetic information, pregnancy, race and ethnicity, religion and creed, salary, pay history, sexual and reproductive health decisions, sexual harassment, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature, unemployment status, victim of domestic violence, sex offense, or stalking. And as my colleague from DCAS identified, there will be specific training because the laws of 2018 specifically identified in the state of New York that all city and state employees will receive annual training. Community board members will receive such training as well through an electronic process, which will be more convenient and comfortable for each. But sexual harassment is defined as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature when submission to or rejection of this conduct affects an individual's employment, unreasonably interferes with the individual's work performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment. Sexual harassment may involve individuals of the same or different genders. A broad range of behavior may be considered sexual harassment, including sexually suggestive remarks, pictures or gestures, verbal abuse or harassment of a sexual nature, subtle or direct propositions for sexual favors, and any unnecessary touching. I'll move on. The next option is reasonable accommodations. And you may ask, what is a reasonable accommodation? A reasonable accommodation is a change or adjustment to a job or work environment that enables a qualified applicant or employee to participate in the job application process, perform the essential function of a job, enjoy the benefits and privileges of employment equal to employees without an accommodation. Reasonable accommodations may be provided based on disability, religion, pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions, victims of domestic violence, sex offenses, or stalking. Types of accommodations: facilities, making facilities physically accessible to persons with disabilities, job restructuring, reallocating non-essential assignments, voluntary shift swaps or reassignments, modified work schedules and leave, modified policies or in support services, equipment, often requested, providing or modifying equipment or devices and materials. Now, in order for one to identify, or if you have identified a complaint, an EEO complaint can be filed against a supervisor, coworker, client, customer, consultant, vendor, or a city employee, or other person who is not a city employee. Complaints must be made within 1 year of the incident that you are complaining about. You can file complaint anonymously. Unlike certain degrees, anonymous complaints are accepted by calling or writing the EEO officer or representative. You may also file an external complaint with any of the federal, state, and local agencies that enforce laws against discrimination. Confidentiality: all EEO-related matters, be they complaints, investigations, requests for reasonable accommodation, and the records, will be handled to the greatest extent possible in the manner that will protect the privacy and interests of those involved. Confidentiality is the utmost to preserve and secure your confidence within the process. Harassment and retaliation. The policy prohibits conduct which unreasonably interferes with an employee's job performance, or creates an intimidating, hostile, or offensive work environment, or creates an abusive working environment based on any protected characteristic. Harassment and or retaliation against a person who opposes or complains about prohibited conduct, participates in any way in the complaint or investigation process, requests a reasonable accommodation, or participates in any way in the reasonable accommodation process are strictly prohibited. Myself and my co-officer, Irving Poi, can be reached by contacting via email posted on the screen or contacting the office directly at 718-286-3000, and we will preserve your confidence as well as assist you through any matters that may come before you. Should you just want to talk or discuss a matter, we are here for you, and we look forward to working with you in the future in each of your boards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure all the members appreciate having a safer environment that's inclusive and inviting. I'd like to take this time to invite from the Land Use Department of City Planning. Kathy, are you available to step up to the mic?
Yes.
Thank you.
Here we go. Hi, good evening.
Hi, Kathy.
So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Just give me 1 second here. And if someone can confirm when I'm going full screen, if you could confirm that. Oh, wait. There we go. Are you able to see this full screen mode?
Perfect.
Yeah, okay, great. Okay. I'm going to minimize the Zoom panel here. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy Coe. I'm a planner at the Queen's Office of the Department of City Planning, and I'm the planning liaison for boards 3 and 4. And thank you all for the time you're putting in tonight and for the time you're putting into serving your community. And tonight, this presentation is just going to basically go over the broad strokes of the land use review process and how your role as a community board member plays a very vital role in all of that. Here's the general agenda of this presentation. We'll cover what the Department of City Planning does and what the department's mission is. We'll also go over zoning as a regulatory tool and why it's important. And finally, we'll end with an overview of the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, known as ULURP, and the board's role in it. So it's important to make the distinction between the Department of City Planning as an agency versus the City Planning Commission. So the Department of City Planning is the city's primary land use agency. The city charter gives DCP the authority to provide technical assistance and develop changes to zoning by working with private or public applicants for land use changes, or by responding to planning challenges through in-house studies. The CPC's role is to consider input from the community board, the borough president, and the general public, and to review applications that request changes to zoning that might affect a given neighborhood. So these changes lead to zoning map and text changes. Sorry, these decisions lead to zoning map and text changes. DCP serves as a technical support to the CPC in its review of roughly 450 land use applications per year, and we make sure that the processes and reviews are efficient and transparent. And in terms of our function and role, our agency is headquartered in downtown Manhattan with borough planning offices in each borough. We use a wide array of skills that ultimately work with other government agencies and the public by providing policy analysis, technical assistance, data on housing, zoning, urban design, transportation, demography, and et cetera, to inform strategic and capital planning decisions. And I just want to take a moment to acknowledge how the COVID crisis has shaped our work over the last, or over a year at this point. And like most aspects of our lives, our processes have gone virtual. And here are some updates to share. NYC Engage, which many of you might have already been using at this point, is a website to get information to participate in public meetings and hearings virtually. And these meetings are held by the CPC and other agencies regarding CPC hearings, environmental scoping hearings, online town halls, etc. And we've been working remotely as central and borough offices have been closed since last March. And we've been available remotely during business hours and will transition into a hybrid model in early May. Our offices will still be closed to the public, but will be available remotely as we have been. And we've been engaged in recovery work as a result of the pandemic, and there are a number of citywide text amendments that are currently in or slated to certify for public review within the next month and a half or so. One being our involvement in New York City's open restaurant program, where we designed with DOT an effort to implement a citywide multi-phase program to expand outdoor seating options for food establishments and promote open space, enhance social distancing, and help these businesses rebound in difficult times. So building on the success, the text would allow sidewalk cafes to remain as per regulations. In addition, the health and fitness text amendment proposes to update outmoded regulations to allow health-related businesses as of right. And in the wake of the pandemic, the text recognizes the need for health and wellness facilities and to remove the need for regulatory hurdles for small businesses. There's also another text amendment proposed to expand the FRESH program to 11 more community districts based on the heightened need for more access to, or local access to fresh food, especially in underserved communities. And finally, the zoning for accessibility text would allow the MTA to leverage private developments to create more accessible subway stations. This text is drafted in partnership with the MTA, the City Council, and the Mayor's Office for People with Disabilities. And as a community board member, you'll have these in-depth presentations at your community board, land use committee hearing meetings, as well as the full board meetings over the next month or two before summer recess. So diving back into just sort of the bigger picture here, DCP's overall mission is pretty clear and ambitious. Our aim is to make all of New York a better place to live, to maintain what works and to improve what doesn't. We know this is bold and broad, and we'll look in the following slides of who we're planning for and how. So looking at the New York City population, since the year 2000, New York City has seen a population increase of about 600,000 people, or 7.7%. That's more than the population of Oklahoma City, just shy of the entire city of Baltimore. New York City's population is estimated to be about 8.3 million, making it the largest city in the US. And I have Queens blocked off here. We're in person. I'd ask if someone wanted to guess, call something out, but I'll just, 2.25 million is the current estimate for the population in Queens. And not only is Queens the largest borough in the area, it's also the second most populated. So it totals 109 square miles and has the largest shoreline. Queens is growing in population and diversity. At our current count and based on current trends, it's estimated that Queens can gain more than 163,000 new residents through 2040. And population growth is led by many factors, more than just what most people imagine as people moving to New York City from elsewhere. It includes natural increase. That's babies are being born, people moving from one borough to another, and then some. Almost half of Queens residents are foreign born, that's 47%, and its demographic diversity leads the city and country. This pie chart's a good indicator of that. These four racial groups are almost perfectly evenly distributed. Here we have these pie charts that show in closer detail the top 10 sources of the foreign-born population in Queens and the rest of the city and how they compare. We can note the higher South American and Bengali populations make up within the top 5 immigrant nationalities in Queens compared to the rest of the city. We also see other countries represented within the top 10 sources in Queens, such as the Colombian and Korean-born population that are not even listed in the top 10 for the city overall. The Queens immigrant population makes up roughly 34% of the total citywide immigrant population. So looking at demography makes for a good segue into talking about how zoning responds to population growth and diversity. Generally speaking, the goal of zoning is to control the built environment for the public good. So originally, zoning's main goals revolved around concerns about light and air, separating uses, and addressing nuances. That was in the early 19th century. Today, zoning addresses a much more complex set of issues. It aims for a harmonious relationship between all users in the city and provides a level of predictability for residents and businesses and provides a framework for appropriate growth. So in short, zoning establishes how a property can be used and it's designed to establish a harmonious relationship with surrounding land uses in the neighborhoods and the city with the public's health, safety, and welfare in mind. In a physical sense, by establishing very specific parameters, it determines the uses that can be conducted within the building, the size and shape or bulk of the building itself, as well as the amount of parking that's required or permitted. And there's also a variety of streetscape measures that can be defined as well. So zoning is an important tool for planning, but it has its limits. For example, zoning can't—
It should be the same indictment number, their correspondence.
Okay. And you said that Mr. Sarmento has—
Please mute yourself.
Sorry, was that a question or someone?
Please continue. Please continue.
What? I'm sorry? Okay, I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. So zoning itself can't generate development if conditions such as the market isn't favorable to development. It also can't initiate or require demolition or changes to buildings. And it also can't dictate construction techniques or architectural styles. So the zoning rules that we're just talking about are contained in the zoning resolution, and development that happens in accordance with the existing zoning and building code is called as of right development. And despite the many land use applications that may come to you for review, nearly all development in New York City is built as of right. So it just has to follow the rules and allowances that already exist. So this is a really important document, which is currently roughly at 4,000 pages. So what does zoning regulate? There are many components in the zoning resolution that dictate use and bulk regulations on a given piece of property. So for example, floor area ratio, FAR, is one of the prime bulk regulations that control the size of buildings. And it determines how much floor area can be located on a zoning lot. So each zoning district has an FAR assigned to it. And when it's multiplied by the area of the zoning lot, it produces the maximum floor area that's allowed to be built. So using a very simple example, I know we don't really want to do too much complicated math in the evening, but say there's a 10,000 square foot lot and it has a maximum FAR of 1.0. That means the floor area on the zoning lot can't exceed 10,000 square feet. That's 1 times 10,000. The floor area can be configured in different ways subject to other lot requirements, but in general, the development can't exceed 10,000 square feet. The zoning resolution also establishes 18 use groups that have been sorted into 4 broad categories of residential, community facility, commercial, and manufacturing uses. There's also, as I said, parking and loading regulations, which have expanded since the 1961 zoning resolution, which responded to the post-war auto boom. And when we refer to the building envelope, we're referring to this maximum 3-dimensional space on a zoning lot where a building can be built. So after applying all of these rules. So as we discussed, FAR is a big part of this, but there's also a lot of other parameters to consider. There are lot width and lot area requirements, yard requirements that might restrict where a building can be located on a zoning lot, height and setback requirements, which might be further regulated based on whether the building is facing a wide street or a narrow street, both of which are defined in the zoning resolution, as well as streetscape requirements that enhance the public realm, such as planting requirements and things like that. So in terms of how zoning is updated and enforced, the city charter gives the authority to DCP to provide technical assistance and develop changes to zoning by working with private and public applicants or developing in-house studies. The CPC, the City Planning Commission, enacts zoning map and text changes as part of the ULURP process, which I'll get into in the closing slides. And the Department of Buildings, the DOB, has the authority to interpret text changes by way of any permit requests that come to them. Again, they're reviewing applications for permits pursuant to existing zoning. And then the Board of Standards and Appeals, which you'll hear more from after this presentation, is an entirely different agency that deals with applications that request variances to zoning due to hardships or due to unique sites. So ULURP, which is a uniform land use procedure, is a process that you'll all become very familiar with. In the next few slides, I'll give you an overview of the process, which takes about 7 months. And once a land use and environmental application have been reviewed completely by DCP, the proposed project is then deemed certified and enters the ULURP process. The New York City Charter requires certain actions that are reviewed by the City Planning Commission to undergo this process, which is a very standardized public review. The key participants in this review process are community boards, the borough president, the City Planning Commission, and the City Council. The City Charter also mandates specific timeframes for each review to take place. So starting with the first in line in ULURP, that's community boards. Within 60 days of receiving a certified application, the community board is required to hold a public hearing and adopt and submit a written recommendation. So upon certification of an application and the results of the environmental review, the community board would have the full application in their hands, but DCP does strongly encourage the applicants to have conversations with the board before it reaches this point. So that's something that we're constantly pushing during the pre-certification process. Boards might differ in the process, but typically what happens once an application is certified is that the land use committee would hold a public meeting with the applicant present, presenting the proposal. This would be held prior to the full board meeting, which is where the land use committee then presents their recommendation based on what they heard at that previous meeting. The full board then reviews and votes on the proposed recommendation. So community board recommendations ultimately inform all other decision makers in the process. The recommendations could be to approve, approve with conditions, disapprove with conditions, disapprove, or abstain. And within 30 days of receipt of a community board recommendation, the borough president then holds a public hearing and submits a written recommendation. And they have 30 days to do so. Oh, just said that. And then following the 30-day borough president review period, the City Planning Commission holds a public hearing and votes on the proposal within 60 days. CPC hearings are generally held twice a month on Wednesdays at the, well, it was once at the hearing room at our headquarters, but is now and has always been live streamed, but right now it's all being held remotely and can be accessed via NYC Engaged. And the 13-member City Planning Commission includes 7 members that are appointed by the mayor, 1 that's appointed by the mayor, 1 appointed by each borough president, and then 1 appointed by the public advocate. And after the borough president issues the recommendation, the City Planning Commission holds a public hearing on the application where the applicant or their representatives presented the proposal. Public comments are also shared at this hearing. And after reviewing public comments, the CPC then schedules a vote. Following the CPC vote, within 50 days, the City Council then holds a public hearing and votes on the project. So the end of this ULURP process is actually the end of my presentation. I know this is a lot of information at once, some very broad, some might have felt very detailed. Typically DCP, you know, before COVID, call it the before times, we have held in-person trainings in the fall, kind of diving deeper into zoning. We've done zoning 101, zoning 201, trainings on environmental review, urban design, city's budgeting process, and we'll be starting up things like that again. So stay tuned, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you so much. It was very thorough, and our folks are.
Yeah, let me hop in for a quick second.
Go ahead, sure.
So you know, one of the things I want to try to do is to ensure we're doing a lot more training. And I know that was a lot to take in. So let me just be the first to say that, especially being that I was the zoning chair of the council. So it took a long time to gain an expertise in this, but you're going to start to see a lot more applications as the economy picks up. We anticipate, and I'm seeing, you know, across all 14 boards in Queens, definitely a lot more land use activity picking up. So we're going to look to do these refreshers and trainings throughout the year. I really urge you, especially if you're going to sit on the land use committees, to really familiarize yourself with this stuff as much as possible. And no, do not expect to get it all in one shot. It took a long time for me to develop an expertise here. So we look forward to doing a lot more of these trainings with the Office of Civic Engagement, for instance, to ensure that you're getting as much knowledge on these applications as possible, on the zoning regulations as possible. So I know it's a lot to take in tonight on some of these trainings, but this is the stuff, this is the bread and butter. And we want you to familiarize yourself with this stuff as much as possible, especially for newer members, because what we often hear as well, you know, the boards may lose expertise in some areas. And the beauty of how the office went through applications is a lot of you, at least a few of you who were appointed, actually had some sort of experience with planning. But for those of you coming on, remember, term limits are going to come in 2028 for community boards. So we need to make sure, and I'm not saying everybody's going to be reappointed, and I can't speak for what 2028 will look like. Well, maybe I can. But the bottom line is we need you to take this serious so that you're developing that expertise. So as board members transition, you can fill those voids as well and step up to the plate. So really take this stuff serious that you're hearing tonight, and there will be a lot more trainings in these specific areas as we move forward. So I just wanted to add that. Sorry, Kat.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Yeah, we look forward to working with you on developing these planning these trainings. And I would also say, please take advantage of the planning liaison contacts that you have. So like I said, I'm the liaison for boards 3 and 4. And I always encourage, anytime there's a question, please just reach out to the planning liaison. We're always happy to help answer any questions and work with you.
I just have a suggestion. This is Lays Out from Community Board 7.
We're gonna move through the presentation, and then, because we're just gonna fly through tonight. So we're not gonna, because we have a long agenda. So I thank you for that, and we will definitely take your suggestion. And you could email that or follow up with us tomorrow on it, but I do need to move the agenda. So Kat.
Yeah, sure. And you can email me, like, and I'll look at it right now. As the EULAR process moves through the boards, you'll experience this process in real time, and we encourage you to ask for proposals ahead of time before they come to the subcommittee and before they come to the floor of the general meeting, if that is something that the proposer is able to do for your board. I know that many boards are doing that, asking for proposals ahead of time so that board members can review them before they come into the subcommittee. I'd like to take this opportunity to invite the Commissioner for Board Standards and Appeals and the City Planner to step up to the mic. Thank you so much. I see you unmuting. I appreciate it. Go ahead and move into your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting us. I'm actually here with my colleague, Ms. Jella Prenga. So if she can also unmute herself, we will both quickly go through the presentation. I just want to congratulate all the new board members. I was a former community board member of Community Board 2 in Queens. So it was an honor for me to serve my board. So so we'll try to go through the presentation very quickly. We do have a lot of items. We'll try to give you an overall summary, and if you have any questions, do not hesitate to give us a call, and we can go through, dive into the details. So slide number 2, please. So we want to basically let you know what our agency does. Board of Standards and Appeals, and what is the role of community board in this regard. So first of all, just a broad overview, Board of Standards and Appeals was created in 1916 along with the New York City's historic first zoning law. And this was created, it's an independent board, and the board was created to grant relief from the underlying zoning regulations that was in the zoning resolution and from other development codes like building codes, fire codes, etc. And the reason it was done, it was to prevent the unconstitutional taking or claims against the city property. Next slide, please. So the board consists of 5 full-time commissioners, and it's mandated that one of the board member has to be a licensed engineer, another has to be a licensed architect, another an urban planner, that would be me, and that no 2 board members can live in the same community. No more than 2 can live in the same borough. So the idea is to have the best representation of our community and of our boroughs. Next slide, please. So what does Board on Standards and Appeals do? These are the following situations where the board has the authority to review and deliberate. One is to vary the regulations of the New York City zoning resolution. In short, variance. The board has the authority to modify the New York State multiple dwelling law, waive or modify fire codes, waive New York State general city laws 35 and 36. These are with regards to development that are being built on either mapped streets that are not built because they are privately owned, or they are built on a private street that is not mapped in the city map, and therefore requires a per New York City code regulation would require this waiver. The board also has the authority to interpret the zoning resolution appeals cases that come before us for zoning interpretation, and also permits vested rights and grants special permits that are stated in the zoning resolution. There are several special permits. I think there are about, 30 plus special permits that are there, varying from bulk regulations to giving board the authority to modify the bulk regulations or use regulations. Next slide, please.
So, hi, maybe I'll also start jumping in here. I work as a staff member at the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals. I guess that's a good segue because to talk about the application process and the timeline. So an application is filed at BSA, just how Vice Chair described for, we see such a wide array of different types of land use applications. And the staff reviews the application once it's submitted to make sure all the required items are there. And then within 3 business days of filing at BSA, the applicant of record, which is usually a land use attorney, but sometimes can be an architect, a planner, or an engineer, but 95% of the time is a land use attorney. Once they file at BSA, they have a responsibility within 3 business days to forward the application materials to the community board. The borough board, if applicable, the borough president, the city council member, and the administrative official who signed the objection, and CPC as well. That's for the administrative official, it is usually DOB, although in some circumstances, it can be a different agency like small business services, for instance, for waterfront properties, but it's usually DOB. And then this application is assigned to a staff member, a project manager, who reviews materials and requests clarifications, corrections, additional information to make sure that the application is complete for and has all the information the commissioners need to review. So the community board receives this application within 3 days of being filed at BSA, and you have 60 days to hold a hearing. That's our usual kind of leeway that we give. However, if you, I understand that some community boards, that time frame isn't always able to be met. We do accept recommendations from the community board after the 60-day timeframe, but we give you that grace period. We're not going to schedule an application for hearing before the 60 days is up. So, after staff review that concurrently occurs while the community board is reviewing the application, and sometimes, you know, other entities like the city council person will sometimes send in a letter. It really depends on the application, but we often get a community board recommendation for each land use application, which the commissioners are very interested in seeing. The application, once it's complete, we have a community board recommendation. We also have all the materials that staff has requested is scheduled for public hearing. And the public hearing is where the 5 commissioners that Vice Chair was describing hold a public hearing and discuss the application, evaluate the application, and you know, request additional information. It's a whole iterative process. And just like DCP, CPC, we have been holding our hearings remotely for a little while now during the pandemic. We hold them approximately once every 2 weeks. And we hold our hearings via Zoom, and an agenda is uploaded to our website. You can always see the agenda for the next hearing on our website, and it gives you information on how to register and participate in the Zoom meeting. We always welcome members of the public, and community board members can attend our hearing as well. Usually they don't, because the recommendation is written out and we receive that, but we have had cases where the community board has a particular issue that they care about, and then they attend our hearing.
So thank you, Jella. Very quickly, as a commissioner, I would say that we do review and take community board's recommendations very seriously, and we do consider them. And so we do welcome community board's participation in this review process. It gives us a lot of insight on cases. Very quickly, this is actually a pretty, I mean, our application process on a yearly basis range from anywhere from 300 to 400 applications. And about a quarter of those applications are related to sites in Queens. Next slide, please. And of those, I just want to give you a breakdown of the typical kind of applications that one sees in Queens. Most of the applications are appeals applications. These are the ones that I mentioned, the New York State GCL 3536 buildings that are being proposed to be built on an unmapped, on a mapped street or a street that is privately owned. Or also appeal cases. We have been seeing a lot of appeals cases that is appealing DOB determinations with regards to sign or other situation, other development. The next part of the target cases are what we call extension of terms. These are old prior BSA approved grants that have term limits that in order for them to continue with their operation, they have to come to the board for extension of the term. And typically in those cases, we are looking for compliance with prior grants. And this is where the community board's input becomes very critical. We do look towards community board giving us an idea of when a site has been operating in compliance, or where improvements could be made, and we do look towards those. And so we try to improve the conditions of the sites where possible, based on recommendations that we get and feedback that we get from the community boards and site conditions. and also amendments to prior grants. And the last one is variances. The typical variances that we get from in Queens has been school related and house of worship related, most of them. And also we get special permits. Sorry,
The
go ahead.
special permits and variances are combined in the
Oh,
light
they are.
yellow.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
in the light yellow.
So thank you for that clarification. And the special permits are also that we get are also related to schools, gyms, which may go away if that text amendment comes through, and other special permits related to parking waivers and some use and bulk waivers, very specific ones. Next slide, please. Okay. So as I mentioned, all through this, we look towards the community board's recommendations. And what I would recommend is when the community board is looking to making the recommendations, they review the findings. Each one of these cases that we do look at, the zoning resolution specifies findings, and the applicant has to meet those findings. So your responses should be in tune with those findings and any other insightful information with regards to the community board, with regards to the neighborhood character, compliance, other issues that we may not be aware of on a daily basis. So Jella, do you want to quickly give a rundown on?
So we just wanted to show you some examples of different types of applications. This is an example of an SOC we call special order calendar, an extension of term application. This is an automotive service establishment that has been in existence for since prior to the 1961 zoning resolution. So 1916 was the beginning of the zoning resolution, and there have been so many amendments, but 1961 was like the major amendment to the zoning resolution. And these, a lot of these, we have different types of extensions of term. There's either statutory extensions of term, where the term is written in the zoning resolution. Like a lot of certain special permits have a term. Like there's an eating and drinking establishment special permit where they, the property owner has to come back every 3 years. There's certain special permits with terms, and there are some that are written out at the discretion of the board. And so this is an existing pre-1961 automotive service station. And we highlighted this because it's an example of a site that was very well maintained. You can see the landscaping in the rear, and it's like very respectful of the neighboring properties, especially since they're residential neighbors. So we thought that was a good example. We also have, like, I guess what we're famous for are variances. And sometimes I think people view our variances as these really large scale buildings that, for-profit developer comes in and gets, but we have, most of our variances are not in that form. We have a lot of nonprofit variances, and we have a lot of variances for small homes. So here are two examples. We have a synagogue here that had some bulk variances. And, this was provided, this really nice rendering was provided to show how this is a community facility, a house of worship, but it's kind of not taking an institutional look. The architecture is kind of trying to stay in line, and you can see there's other institutions in the area as well. So you can see it fits into neighborhood character. And that's part of the findings for a variance, that you get a bulk waiver, but it has to, or a use waiver potentially, depending on the situation or the circumstance, but it has to fit into neighborhood character. Now, to the right is a 2-family semi-detached home. This is a classic variance in that it was a very narrow lot, only 19 feet wide. And there was a rezoning where that from R32 to R3X, which does not permit semi-detached homes. Although there are many semi-detached homes nearby, this lot is so narrow, and it's much more narrow than most of the neighboring properties in the area. It is only 19 feet wide, and if it were to comply, if you were to build an as of right development, as this planner from DCP was discussing, the building would only be 9 feet wide, which is not really a viable home, and it would just remain a vacant lot. So they came to BSA to create the semi-detached home and get a few very minor waivers just so they could build a habitable home basically on the property. And then we have a lot of special permits, but we have been seeing a lot of school special permits where basically you can locate a school in a manufacturing or commercial zoning district, but you need to be within close proximity to a residential district, 400 feet away, and you need to demonstrate that you are, adequately controlling the building, making sure that there's sound attenuation, making sure that we send this to school safety. That's part of the findings as well, making sure that drop off and pickup of students is safe for the neighborhood. And we get a lot of these applications, and they're very carefully reviewed and by both the board commissioners, and we send it out to DOT, Department of Transportation, to review this. And we also send it out to Department of Environmental Protection. We just want to make sure that the students in proposed schools are safe, but we recognize there's a big need for schools throughout the boroughs. And so we've been getting a lot of that. And then an interesting one that's kind of unique to Queens is that if you're building within the airport.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is very unique to Queens and specifically to Community Board 7, I think. This is typically for developments that are going to be built within the runway of LaGuardia Airport and JFK. There is a height limit, and that height limit could be modified, provided the federal FAA and Port Authority of New York and New Jersey approve that. So that's the primary factor in many of them. And you would see developments in Flushing area where they, you wouldn't know it unless you see the map, that they might be in the flight path, but they have gotten this special permit from Board of Standards to be able to be above the height of 150 feet. That's very unique to Queens. I just want to add one thing with regards to the variance. I mean, we also get variance for affordable housing. That is something new, and especially with the nonprofit developments, the findings are slightly different than for for-profit variance applications. In the case of nonprofit developments, we are looking for their programmatic need and how the programmatic need can or cannot be accommodated within the confines of the site, and that would require that for which the developer is seeking use or a bulk variance. So that I just want to highlight that difference there. Thank you, Jella.
Yes, there's different types of variances. Yes.
Yeah. And these are just a few of the special permits that we mostly see in Queens, but there are others. Should you need more information as to how to go about them when it comes to your community board, do feel free to call our office. You cannot talk to the commissioners, but you can talk to our executive director and the assigned project managers. So do talk to them and get a feedback and see how the community board should approach it. And we welcome you all to attend our community board meetings virtually. I have to say, due to the virtual hearing process, we have gotten very good turnout from the community board members and neighbors. So that is great. And we hope you will continue to attend our hearings and give us feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for that amazing presentation. It was so thorough, and the real life expectations were really appreciated. I'm sure for most folks that helps a lot. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Irving from our office. Thank you so much for stepping up and continuing to provide some training for our new appointees and reappointees. Irving, take it away.
Hi, good evening. Congratulations to all the new board members and hello to renewing members. Also, thank you to Kathy Ko, Vice Chair Shampachanda, and Jella Prenga. They are our colleagues in City Planning and Board of Standards and Appeals. Just a quick reminder that all of these things are legal proceedings that take a lot of weight. And if you read the newspapers, quite a few land use items do end up in court. And it makes all of this just so much more important that we pay attention. There was a lot to unpack today, and we didn't give enough time to City Planning or Board of Standards and Appeals to fully give you the explanation of what's happening. And it's not practical for this. This was just an introduction and a taste. I'd like to point out that one of the sort of silver linings of the last year and a half of being home and everyone working remote is that a lot more of these materials are now becoming available online or on disk for electronically. So each one of these applications that we've talked about are available in some shape or form because by the charter, the community boards, the borough president's office, the council members are required to get full copies of all of these applications. And all of these applications will give you every single detail that you will need to have a way to start looking at what the proposal is and what they're talking about when you get to the meetings. As Kathy said before, very often what happens is when the applications get to the community board offices, they get distributed to the land use committee. So the land use committee members will have a chance to meet with the proposed developers or property owners to discuss in more detail what that project is and what the zoning is trying to do and what it is they're asking for that is not according to the zoning as it's written today. The good news is you'll get to meet these people in person in a more relaxed atmosphere than a public hearing at the community board to really go over the project and discuss it in detail. The other thing I just wanted to relate was that the borough president's office is always very interested to know what the issues are, what the concerns are, and what the people are thinking, what the community boards and the public who go to the public hearings are thinking about. So there's always borough president staff at the land use committee meetings and the public hearings to hear what is being discussed, what is being talked about, what the concerns and issues are. So we are there to provide technical assistance to anybody in the community boards who requests it. The planning department's email address is posted somewhere, I think, on your agenda or program. And even though we're on Zoom right now, very often a borough president staff member is on the Zoom for the land use committee meeting and for the public hearing where the votes are being taken. So I encourage everyone here to make use of the borough president's staff to answer questions, maybe clarify things if you need that help. And with that, I'm going to also remind everyone that the zoning resolution, which is the basis for things that the Department of City Planning does and the Board of Standards and Appeals, is available online. It's not the easiest reading, but at least you have access to it that may give you some information and help to shape your questions. So with that, I'm going to say congratulations, good luck, and we're looking forward to hearing from you at the meetings and what have you. So take care, and please be sure to reach out to us to ask any questions you might have.
I am from myself, Mukit Chaudhary from Community Board 3. I request our Borough President, due to our...
Sorry, at this time, we're not unmuting. And we're gonna ask that you send an email. We have a large, long program, and next we're inviting Amanda from our community board to discuss our community board budget basics. Amanda is our budget director here at Borough Hall. Amanda, can you step up to the mic?
Would you please excuse us, please, our Borough President?
Sorry, all right, sir. Today we're not going to have calling out. So if there's a concern,
breaking my Ramadan.
Good evening, everyone. I'm ready to present. Actually, I'm going to share my screen. One moment.
Thank you, Amanda.
Can everybody see the full screen, or do you see two screens?
Two.
1 second. How about now?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. Good evening, and congratulations. My name is Amanda Menachini, and I am the Director of Budget for Borough President Richards. I'm just going to dive in straight to some budget basics. So what is the city budget? It's the blueprint that articulates public policy through revenues and expenditures. That's the technical term of what the city budget is.
Amanda, give me 1 second. So I know it is Ramadan as well. So if there are individuals on the boards who do need to go and pray, please, to break fast, please feel free to do that. We will not hold anything against you on that if you have to go as well, right? So I just wanted to make sure we put that out there as well. Thank you. You may continue.
Thank you, BP. I know that it's and I agree. I wanted to note for everyone here now, we do encourage you to stay and participate. Of course, if you need to break fast, please excuse yourself, and know that this is being live streamed on YouTube, and you can come back and visit it at any time. Thank you. Go ahead, Amanda.
Thank you. So as I was saying, this is, like the technical term of the budget, but what we like to say at the Borough President's Office is that the city budget is really like so much more than all this. It's actually a public statement of what is important to the city and what the priorities are. So the city budget determines what activities are to be funded, outlines how government will pay for activities, and it operates on a fiscal year that starts on July 1st and ends June 30th. So right now we're in fiscal year 2021, and that will end on June 30th, and then on July 1st, we'll begin fiscal year 2022. So on this slide, it basically breaks down 3 interlocking parts of the budget. First, I'm going to start with the revenue budget, and the revenue budget basically outlines money expected from federal funds, state funds, taxes, city revenue. These numbers, the 92.3 billion, that's actually from the mayor's current prelim budget for FY 2022, which we'll get into in 1 second. The actual number is 92.28 billion, but I just rounded. So for the state, 92.3 billion for FY 2022. So that's the revenue budget. That revenue budget actually determines what is the maximum amount that the city can essentially get for the expense budget, right? Because you need to have a balanced budget. So that's why the revenue budget, then we drop down to the expense budget, also says 92.3 billion for fiscal year 2022. When we go to expense, what expense is, it's basically day-to-day operating, it's a day-to-day operating budget. So that will include things like city employees, youth programs, senior programs. It also includes things like supplies, rent, utilities. It's basically anything to keep an operation running,
Also, it includes debt service. So that debt service that you see here, that's actually interest for capital projects because the city borrows money from the state and the federal government to pay for capital projects. So we go this way, and now it leads us to the capital budget. The estimate for FY 2022 is 9.2 billion. The capital budget supports any larger projects, so things such as schools, housing, infrastructure, even things like street maintenance. It also covers the purchase of large equipment. So for example, like the two H&Hs that we have in Queens, if an H&H is requesting a piece of large equipment, for example, like a Linac machine that's for cancer treatment, that could also be part of the capital budget. I'm not sure what this line is here, but okay. So these are key dates basically out of the city charter. So in November, the mayor will release, it's basically a financial update of where we are with the budget. By January 16th, the mayor has to release the preliminary budget. This is all according to the charter. I'm actually going to go into a timeline in a few moments. By April 26th, the mayor will have to publish and present the executive budget. And then also, I'm sorry, somebody keeps writing on the screen. I don't know how that's possible. Okay. And then by June 30th, the budget would have to get adopted. There's also another June 5th date in the charter. Basically, it says that if the budget's not passed by June 5th, then the current expense budget and the tax rate will go in, will stay, and then will go into effect when the next budget is adopted. Now I'm going to go into the role of the mayor, the city council, and the borough president, what they do throughout the budget process. So the role of the mayor is, like I said in the previous slide, they will issue the November financial plan update, the preliminary budget in January, and then the executive budget in April.
Hello.
Hi, please unmute your. Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay. Also, under the direction of OMB, the mayor will assist spending and revenue to decide budget estimates for agencies. So that's everything like DOT, FDNY, anything city for senior services, everything like that. The mayor will also negotiate with the city council to come to the adopted budget. The mayor will then implement the adopted budget. And then after the budget is adopted, the mayor can propose budget modifications over the course of the fiscal year. So those are basically just any changes to the budget after it's adopted. Sorry, it's not letting me go to my next slide. Here we go. Okay. Then we get to the role. We get to the role of the city council. So the city council receives and reviews the mayor's preliminary budget and the executive budget. Throughout this time, they will hold public hearings after the preliminary budget comes out and then also after the executive budget comes out. The city council will also negotiate with the mayor finally to come to the adopted budget. And then once the budget is adopted, as the mayor is proposing budget modifications or changes, the city council could either accept or reject whatever is proposed by the mayor. And then for the role of the borough president, so the Queens BP and all the other borough presidents, they basically hold budget hearings for the preliminary budget with borough board. So we had ours back in February, and the BP can attest to this. This was a very long, it was almost a 12-hour hearing. It's a hearing open to the public. What we do is first we allow community boards to testify, then it's like hospitals, CUNYs, SIGs, CBOs, and then basically what any individual that wants to testify, we go until everybody that wanted to testify can testify. It's a public hearing. So that's usually in February. Ours was February 1st. So after that hearing, what the borough president does is then, based off of all of that info, the borough president is able to respond to the preliminary budget. You can check out the borough president's response to the preliminary budget on our website. So that's where we're at now. And like I said, I'll get to a timeline. I think it's on the next slide. And then the executive budget will come out shortly, and we will essentially, the borough president will make another response both to the executive budget.
The president is you. Yeah, I hear you. And if you want to meet
I'm back. The borough president will also prepare the borough's needs, statements, and priorities. The borough president is also able to make capital and expense appropriations. And also the borough president works with the mayor and the city council on any budgetary decisions. Okay, so this is the timeline I really wanted to show everybody. So budget making is really a year-round process, but we usually, start at the beginning of the fiscal year and then end it off at the end of the fiscal year. So if you look at this timeline, the fiscal year will begin July 1st. And then in the late summertime, fall, the community board will be able to indicate their priorities, which Chris from DCP will actually go into more detail after my presentation. The comptroller reviews previous fiscal year. Then the mayor releases his November plan. Then is the preliminary budget. As I stated before, right after the preliminary budget, that's when the BP holds his community board hearing. With that, we're able to hear from everybody and anybody in Queens that wants to testify. After that, the borough president makes recommendations and makes some capital allocations. While this is all going on, the city council is also holding their own hearings in response to that preliminary budget. And then the mayor, after hearing the borough president's responses, after hearing the city council, and even it could even be any arguments from interest groups or the public, anything, the executive budget will basically reflect any changes made from the preliminary budget. So once the executive budget comes out, which should be coming out soon this month, it will kind of start all over again. So the borough president will then be able to make the recommendations. It will be published online, and then also finish up the capital allocations. The city council will start their process again of holding hearings. Then the city council will vote, they'll do the handshake, and then the budget is adopted and the fiscal year ends. And again, I'm sorry about this line. I don't know how that happened, but here's my email. Maricela also dropped it in the chat. If you have any budget questions at all, please feel free to reach out to us. We're here as a resource and we want to be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. I think it was a lovely presentation, and the lines added to it. It's sort of like the budget lines. We're watching them go up.
We're almost there. Listen, I want to thank everybody for their patience so far tonight. We are almost at the finish line. But for all of you new members who thought you were just going to have all of this great fun, this is all the stuff you have to get to learn. So, so this is what you signed up for. Don't start getting nervous now. All right, we're down almost to the last two presenters. So I will turn it back to Kat. But thank you for your patience.
Thank you, BP, for hanging with us. It's a long night, and we appreciate everyone pitching in and doing the work. If Chris has a moment to step up to the mic. Thanks, Chris. I see you unmuted.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my desktop here. One second, I might have to rejoin.
All righty, while he does that, what was our next thing, Cap?
We can move on to Chair Bratton if Betty's available to
see her.
Sorry about that.
No, Chris is back.
The crashed, but I am sharing this now. Can you see my screen?
Okay, all right.
We can, thank you.
Great. All right, so I'll keep this brief. I know you all have been here for a while, and thank you to the Borough President for having us here today. So today what I'm going to be talking about is the community district needs and budget request process and what role this has in the city's budget process. I'll give you an overview of the main elements here of this charter mandate and what they inform. And then additionally, I'll just briefly review some additional resources that DCP maintains, including our community district profiles and Facilities Explorer, and how you can use these in your work. So moving on, I won't spend too much time on this slide. You just got an introduction to the city's budget phases previously, but I just want to highlight here that the community board input you'll be submitting as a community board member is really one way of thinking about it as the beginning of the budget cycle, and it feeds directly into the next phases of the budget cycle and is one of the primary inputs there. So really what I'm talking about here when I'm saying the statement of community district needs and community board budget requests, it's really two separate charter mandates that are now integrated into one process, and it's facilitated by DCP together with the Office of Management and Budget. So there are really two pieces here. On the left, we have your statement of community district needs, and this is really more of a qualitative description of the needs of your community district and recommendations for different programs, projects, and activities that meet those needs. On the right-hand side here, we have a focus on the community board budget requests. And this is a prioritized list of both capital and expense requests that you submit to specific city agencies. So these get a little bit more specific about the particular needs of your community board, and they're submitted to particular agencies so that you can really address very specific issues in your district. I know this seems a little bit abstract, so I'll go ahead and give you an idea of what this looks like in practice. So on this next slide, to break down the community district needs and budget requests a bit more, we first have the top 3 pressing issues section. And here, this is where your board selects the top 3 issues that are facing your district overall. For each of these, you then provide narratives, which are written paragraphs that explain why those issues are particularly prevalent in your district. In the middle here, we've highlighted the most important issue by policy area. So we've also broken down the website that's used to submit these into 7 policy areas that roughly correspond to your community board committees. And in this section, you basically will pick one most important issue for each of these policy areas that provides an additional depth about any ongoing issues in your district. And again, you'll provide an explanation for these as well. And then finally, as I mentioned, you have the budget requests. And here, these are prioritized, and there'll be requests for specific services or infrastructure investments that help to address some of the needs that you've mentioned in your submission. So to give you an overview of what this looks like citywide, in the last round of submissions, which happened in October of 2020, this is what we received citywide for the top 3 pressing issues identified by all 59 community boards. We can see overall that affordable housing is the most popular issue or the most frequently identified issue citywide. And the number of boards that submitted affordable housing actually increased over the last year. We also see that schools and land use trends are in the top 3 issues selected citywide, which is consistent with previous years. We can also see that these issues vary year to year, and they also vary between boroughs. So we can see particular issues here like street flooding that are more prevalent in Queens, and we know that.
Chris, unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. So here we can see there are other issues like street flooding, for example, that are more prevalent in Queens than in other than in other boroughs. So we see that the issues vary between boroughs fairly significantly as well. I want to dig a little bit deeper and give you an example of what one of these looks like. So here I'm highlighting a submission from Queens CB3, and this community board identified economic development and recovery as a top 3 pressing issue. I've highlighted only part of their submission here. You can find the full reports online, and I'll show you where to find those. But here they talked about the effects of the pandemic on the local economy, and particularly how minority businesses were disproportionately impacted by the economic effects of the pandemic. So this is where you'll start to see a lot more of the qualitative information submitted by the boards that really helps you understand why these needs are pressing in these areas. To give you an example of a budget request, this is what a typical request will look like. So here I've highlighted an example of a request from Queens CB5. And this particular request was for rehabilitating bridges. So this request was submitted to the Department of Transportation. I've highlighted the explanation here that was provided by the board. So here they provided some specific information about the needs here and what needs to be done to resolve it. And then they also listed the specific location along with any local supporters, which could include organizations, CBOs, or even elected officials. What happens then is each agency is required to respond to these requests. So here's an example of a budget request response for a different budget request. In this case, this was Queens CB12 that submitted a request for reconstructing streets in their district. Here we can see that the agency, in this case DOT, provided the response that they agree with the request and will accommodate it. And they provided some additional information here that the project was actually funded in a prior fiscal year and the construction contract was already let. They've also provided here these additional comments, which are optional. So these won't be found for every response, but here they provided some additional details about the specific project numbers that the community board can follow up and stay on, track this over the next few months or years. These can be found on OMB's publications page, and this is from what the document that we call the Community Board Budget Register. Moving on now, I'll just finish us off here with an overview of some of our resources that we maintain at the Department of City Planning that might help you when you're building your submissions for the Statement of Needs. And these resources can come in handy for many different topics. We've included some sample questions here at the top and then give you an overview of what these different tools are. And this is really just a small snapshot of some of the tools that we have online. For example, if you're trying to find your district Statement of Needs, what we've been talking about tonight, you can actually find these online on our Community District Profiles portal. You can either go to Google and search for Community District Profiles NYC, or you can see that we have the URL here, which is communityprofiles.planning.nyc.gov. I've highlighted a couple other resources here as well, where you can get more specific data about any public facilities in your district, zoning and land use information, or even census data for your specific neighborhood. So that's all I have for tonight. This was really just a short preview, and my team is the planning coordination team at City Planning. We work with all 59 community boards on their submissions each year. We're also available to do more detailed trainings with your boards one-on-one. So if you're interested in learning more about this process, you can reach out to us using this contact information here. Also, feel free to reach out to your Queens DCP Borough Office Planning Liaison, and they can also help connect you with our team, and we work very closely with them, so we'll be in touch. Thank you all.
Chris, thank you so much. And to the hundreds of folks sitting here and being dedicated to this process, I really appreciate you all, because you'll be identifying the district needs that drive our policy forward. I'd love to invite Chair Bratton up for this amazing presentation I've been waiting for all night. No preference.
How you doing? I'm going to try and share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Congratulations, everybody, especially to all the new board members. I'm Betty Brayton, the chairperson of Community Board 10. This part of the training relates to how boards function, why parliamentary procedure is important, and how it's used to assist us in doing the work that we do. FYI, you don't have to take notes. You will get written material that goes with my comments that goes into more detail. Why parliamentary procedure? In a nutshell, it's what makes meetings function. Parliamentary procedure exists pretty much for the same reasons we have all the other procedures we have in our lives, whether they're formal or informal. All through history, Since people have been on this earth, people have tried to figure out ways to do the things that they do and function as a society. We have laws, rules, and guides. They've developed right from ancient times. You can go back to Hammurabi's code, you can go back to the ancient Romans and Greeks, you can go into all kinds of background into why laws and policies on how we function together have developed. What's the purpose? The purpose is to form a framework so governments, organizations, and even families can function. We all know we got rules in our own homes. And we hope that everybody follows them so we don't kill each other. Parliamentary procedure. The goal of parliamentary procedure is the good use of formal procedures put together with some good old common sense that allows for us to work in a group as a collective body to get what we need to get done. For us, parliamentary procedure's purpose is just what it says. Oh, how did I lose that one? Just what it says on the side. We have four main goals. Number one, extend courtesy to everyone. Two, focus on one thing at a time. Three, ensure that majority rules, but we have to ensure that the rights of minority opinions on any issue get heard and get listened to. Parliamentary procedures are means to an end. It's not an end in itself. The goal for us is to use parliamentary procedure in order to function as a group of people serving on a governmental body that meets monthly and deals with numerous topics. Parliamentary procedures and common sense go together so that we can do what we do on any given evening in a meeting in an appropriate manner and in a reasonable amount of time. The key word is effectively. Effectively using parliamentary procedure helps us do our work. The significance is that parliamentary rules allow that to get done. When basic parliamentary procedures are put together with common sense, groups function. Says it, common sense is the best sense I know of. If you recognize that always the goal is to accomplish the business at hand. Reality is parliamentary procedure is common sense said with big words. Most of us probably hear the words parliamentary procedure and think Robert's rules. I bet there's at least a few people on here who don't have a clue what Robert's rules is. Crash course, Roberts is a book. It's been around since 1876. Over the years, it's been revised many times. The fact that Roberts has been revised so many times is your clue that those rules are not etched in stone. They are not laws. Robert's rules are a tool that groups use. When we talk about Robert's rules in parliamentary procedure, it's important from a common sense point of view to understand that the key to successful meetings is always remembering the point is not in all the picky little details. The point is always that we function according to an acceptable framework of procedure that allows for our business to be accomplished fairly and legally. Parliamentary procedure is way more than just the way Roberts deals with motions. For us, how we function and the procedures we use do not just involve Robert's rules. In fact, Roberts is almost at the bottom of our list. Each community board is an autonomous city agency. We are not a community organization. We're not a block association. We're not a civic association or a neighborhood club. The way community boards conduct business is governed, as we stated when we swore our oath, by the Constitution of the United States, the laws of the state of New York, the charter of the city of New York, any applicable rulings of the Conflicts of Interest Board, and each individual's community boards bylaws. Corporation council opinions sometimes may be part of the mix. Those words we swore to earlier were not just a bunch of ceremonial words. We are governmental officials, and each of us is responsible to honor that oath. Anything the city charter has in it, any law, anything in city rulings, such as those from conflict of interest, or opinions that are relevant from the Corp Council, always supersede and take precedence over anything that may be in board bylaws or Robert's rules. The rules we follow have one overriding purpose, I'll say it again, to provide a means whereby the affairs of community boards are conducted fairly, legally, and harmoniously, so that the will of the majority of members is carried out without tromping on the concerns of those who have other views. Common sense and common decency are required of all of us. Our work is part of government in action. In a democracy, not everyone agrees all the time. Disagreement is okay, it's fine. Disagreeability is not. Here are the 6 basic components of a community board's parliamentary procedure. You could call it parliamentary procedure for dummies. You need notice. Members of the public must be informed of when a meeting is going to be held. You need a quorum. There has to be a certain number of members present in order to conduct business. You need an order for the proceedings, a written agenda of what happens when. Discussion has to be fair and orderly. Decisions require a vote. Abstentions should be rare and for a valid reason. And records need to be kept. We're required to keep minutes for years. Who does what? Responsibilities of the board. The board members collectively elect a chairperson and other officers. That can be different offices on different boards. Each board can establish what offices they need, and different boards have different sets of offices. All board members are required to attend and participate. Effective meetings require planning. Members need to be committed to the board's purpose, understand the different roles of the board and the office, and they are different roles. Need to understand the issues that come before us. We need to understand the processes involved. And I know the land use process and the budget processes are things those of you who are new are going to have to learn, but you will learn them if you pay attention. And above all, board members should be participants. The board chairperson is the presiding officer at board meetings and has the responsibility to ensure that fairness prevails and that meetings are conducted without disruption. Excuse me. Board chairs are the agency head for the individual boards that they chair. They each have many other duties and responsibilities in regard to the supervision and functioning of their board offices, etc., but that's a different topic. All board members, though, need to be mindful of the legal employer-employee relationship between the board as a collective body, the district manager, and the staff. That relates to what you heard earlier about the EEO policies. Collectively, the board employs the staff. They are our employees. There are things legally that we need to be very careful about what you do. And one of the ways to better address that is to be mindful that it is the district manager who supervises and directs staff activity in the office. Individual board members should not be interacting directly with staff other than the district manager, and it's the chairperson who supervises the district manager, not individual board members. Now, that doesn't mean you can't ever talk to the staff. What that means is individual board members don't call up the board and say, do this and do it right now. The staff has workflow. They have things that they are already doing. You need something done, you talk to the district manager, and the district manager will fit it into how they are working. Individual members should not be contacting agencies directly. It's the district manager who has the role to act as the liaison between the board and all government agencies. It's the district manager who is responsible for coordinating service-related operations within the district. Confusion is inevitable if agencies must be prepared to respond individually to 50 members of 14 boards. That's a lot of people. Committee chairs should also consult with the district manager and the board chairperson prior to making any contact with agencies. There's a great deal of truth to the old adage about the left hand and the right hand knowing what each other are doing. It's the board chairperson who talks to the press. And that's something that happens after especially controversial meetings. There might be a reporter in the audience. They'll go up and start talking to a board member, and then you'll end up in the newspaper as if you're talking for the board. And you may not be intending to. It's always very wise when any member of the press approaches you to always yourself, before you start talking to the press, indicate clearly that you are expressing only your own opinion. You do not speak for the board, and refer the reporter, if they want a statement from the board, to the board. The chairs of various committees are also responsible that committee meetings function in a fair and orderly way. Committee meetings require a quorum, and minutes must be kept of committee meetings. At meetings, each board member has the right to make motions, debate the subject, and has the responsibility to vote on motions before the board. Each board member has the responsibility to attend and participate in board meetings and committee meetings. What do we do and how? Well, we have board meetings. Board meetings are meetings of the full board where business is conducted. A quorum is required. Business on many topics may occur at a board meeting. Public hearings, we hold public hearings. We're required to hold at least one public hearing a month. Most boards do that at their regular monthly meeting, but it's not required that it has to be at the regular monthly meeting. A public hearing deals with a specific topic to allow the public to receive information and to voice their opinions on that topic. A ULURP public hearing requires a quorum of 20% of the appointed members of the board, but no less than 7 members of the board. Regular public hearings that are not ULURP don't require a quorum. That's kind of why sometimes boards schedule it at the beginning of the meeting to have their public hearing. Gives people a little opportunity and slack on being late. During a public hearing, the word public, that's when the public speaks, not when the board members speak. The board members listen during a public hearing. You'll have an opportunity to speak on whatever the issue is at a later point. Committee meetings are meetings that deal with a specific topic. Committee meetings require a simple majority of the committee members for a quorum. Committee structures may vary from board to board. We're not a one-size-fits-all set of agencies. All of our neighborhoods have similarities, and all of our neighborhoods have differences. Each board has the latitude to set up their own structures. A time period for the public to speak is required at every board meeting. That's separate from a public hearing. Individual boards may determine when during a meeting that takes place. Some boards do it at the middle, some boards do it at the end, some boards do it at the beginning, some do it in a mixed fashion. It's up to each individual board how to schedule it, but There always must be an opportunity for the public to speak on whatever the public wishes to speak about. And it's separate from public hearings. Conduct at meetings and conducting meetings. And as a chairperson, this is kind of important. During a public hearing, the public goes first, not the board members. During a presentation, speakers or presenters should never be disrespected. Remember always that debate is not with them. They are doing their jobs. If there is a lawyer, an architect, a representative of an agency, and they're talking about a project or an action that may be unpopular, they have every right to come into the board and present their plan or their project. We have the right to vote on it and consider it, but it is not a time to anybody to be yelling at a presenter or saying nasty things or trying to, get some questions asked that have no business being asked. We may have curiosity, but there are some things you don't legally have the right to know. Audiences, especially when something is controversial, audiences can be angry. It does not help your chairperson control a meeting if board members decide to start turning around and talking to people in the audience or, just yelling out comments as well. We are a governmental body and we must conduct ourselves that way. Motioning, debating, and discussing. All votes, including those for board offices, are public. If you're not comfortable with that, you're on the wrong kind of board. Every vote that we take is a public vote and will go in the minutes how you voted. Your best friend can be sitting in the audience and maybe have a different opinion than the board has. You're going to have to learn to deal with. Sometimes people don't like how we vote. Hopefully they do like how we vote, but sometimes they don't. It's not comfortable, but it's the law. A committee's report or recommendation is a motion for which no second is required. Nominations also do not require seconds, but it's not out of order from a common sense standpoint. If somebody seconds a motion that doesn't need to be seconded, sometimes people in the audience don't know that those types of motions don't need seconds. There are sometimes board members who don't really remember that those are the cases. It's not a big thing if somebody seconds a motion that doesn't have to be seconded. It's just common sense. The time for debate, expressions of opinion and why are not during a presentation. It's during the discussion on a motion to vote. Whenever possible, motions should be worded in the positive. What do I mean? It's to avoid confusion when voting on them. The purpose of a motion is to put something on the floor for a vote. A member can make a motion to approve an item and then may vote no on the item. The purpose of the motion is to put it out there so you can talk about it. Positive motions prevent situations of backwards votes where a yes is really no and a no is really yes, and vice versa. And there's a reason for that. It's how abstentions play in. There's always a possibility on something that is going to be a close vote where you could end up with the results you don't want. For example, there's 50 members on a board. On any given night, 5 of them are absent, so there's 45 people present. A motion is made to disapprove building a 50 zillion million story building. 22 people vote yes to disapprove. 21 people vote no to disapproving. And then there's 2 votes left over. 2 people who haven't voted. They abstain. You know, they might be the vote whose best friend is in the audience. To some other reason, they just didn't understand the debate and are taking the easy way out. Those 2 people abstain. Those 2 abstentions go with the no votes. So the final tally is not 22 to 21 and 2 left over. The final tally is 22 to disapprove and 23 to not disapprove. So always it's best to word things in the positive. You know.
All righty. Thank you so much.
2 more and it's it.
Okay.
I'm an old school teacher. This sums it up. Remember what you learned in kindergarten. Put your hand up. Wait to be called on. Let other people talk. Cooperate with each other. That's what it's all about. We're governmental. Notification is required of our meetings. Our locations need to be accessible. And as much as we can, we need to be accessible by public transportation. Bottom line is, we live in Queens. We function in the most diverse place in the world. We represent different communities geographically, ethnically, culturally, racially, with competing agendas at times and competing desires. The goal is that we are government at work, and we need to work to find the consensus to move ourselves forward. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Chair Bratton, and to the community board 2021 and 2023 members. Thank you all. Congratulations to all of you. Pat yourselves on the back for an amazing night of learning. Congratulations to each and every one of you. I'd like to kick it off to the Deputy Borough President to close us out. Thank you so much.
Congratulations to the new class of Community Board appointees, the inaugural class for Queensborough President Donovan Richards. But we'd be remiss if we didn't also thank our Community Board chairs and district managers. So let's give a shout out to Community Board 1, Chair Marie Torniali, District Manager Florence Colares, Community Board 2, Lisa Deller, District Manager Deborah Marco Kleinart, Community Board 3, Chair Renetta English and District Manager Giovanni Reed, Community Board 4, Chair Marilena Giampino and District Manager Christian Casagnol, Community Board 5, Chair Vincent Arcuri Jr., District Manager Gary Gianardo, Community Board 6, Chair Alexa Weitzman, District Manager Frank Yay! Yay! Thank you for also serving on the transition. Community Board 7, Chair Eugene T. Kelly Jr. and District Manager Marilyn McAndrews. Community Board 8, Chair Martha Taylor and District Manager Marie Adam Ovide. Community Board 9, Chair Kenichi Wilson, District Manager James S. McClellan. Community Board 10, thank you, Betty Bratton, for chairing and for your presentation. District Manager Karen Peterson. Community Board 11, Chair Michael Buddha Bin McCrown, District Manager Joseph Marziano. Community Board 12, Chair Carlene Thorbs, District Manager, the fabulous Yvonne Reddick. Community Board 13, Anja Agugliaro, District Manager Mark McMillan. Community Board 14, Chair Dolores Orr, District Manager Jonathan Gasca. Thanks so much, and I'll kick it back to the Borough President.
Woo, what a night. I led from the front. I stayed on the entire time. My staff was saying, you don't have to stay on for the entire thing, but we don't lead from the rear here. I just want to thank each and every one of you, new members, including old members, for indulging with us tonight. Once again, you know, I just want to stress, and I think Betty made a lot of great points tonight. Let's get to work for the people of Queens. You know, a lot of folks are struggling right now. There's a lot of fear in Queens right now. That's something I continuously hear all across the borough, whether it's people struggling to stay where they're at, where they live at, whether it's making sure that our streets are safe, whether it's ensuring that our healthcare system is better, our education system is better. These are the things you have been selected and chosen to work on. and to be a voice on. So I really urge everybody to work together. And I look forward to seeing you out there. And I'm really excited about the future of Queens. I can't tell you how optimistic I am about where we're headed, especially in light of a lot of the federal assistance we're getting, down to the state, to the local government. I think we really are in a prime position to tell a story about our diversity, but also tell a story about our struggles and how we will triumph over COVID-19. I think we have a story to tell the world. So I'm very optimistic about where we're headed, but we can only do that by working together, even through our differences of opinion, whatever your political party is, whatever part of the political spectrum you're on. The bottom line is when we all come together, whether we agree on how we get there is a different story. The bottom line, we have to remain focused on the interests of the people of Queens. And I think at the end of the day, we can all agree that we want a better future for our children. So thank you, congratulations. I will allow everybody to unmute quickly and say bye and sound crazy, and then we are out of here.
Bye.
Thank you, and
Bye.
bye.
Bye from the
Bye.
And bye, bye. Thank you all.
Yeah.